What is the most shocking misconception about personal finance?
People do not understand the difference between stocks, bonds, and funds. It's that basic.
What's the biggest mistake that people, and particularly retail investors, make during these volatile markets?
34% of adults have a minimum level of financial literacy. So only 1 in 3 can pass a basic financial test. There's a very dangerous gap developing in the world. There's actually a term for this. It's called the financial advice gap. Unless you have a certain level of wealth, you are literally shut out of wealth management services.
If you could share one universal truth about money that you think everyone should live by, what would it be?
That's a really good question.
This is The Blonde Dollar with Ignacio Ramirez.
Hello everyone, and welcome to a new episode of The Blonde Dollar. Today we are super excited to have Patrick DeBattista on board. Patrick, many of you may know him. He's on a mission to democratize and demystify financial knowledge. He's based in Malta. He's a chartered financial analyst, a certified public accountant, and seasoned financial educator with over 20 years of experience helping individuals and businesses consolidate, grow, and protect their finances. Patrick has delivered well over 200 financial workshops across Europe and is a lecturer at the University of Malta and other business schools. He's a regular contributor to leading European media and collaborates with platforms like Love in Malta to create tailored financial education videos that reach thousands, if not millions. In 2023, Patrick was also selected by the government of Malta to lead the country's national initiative on money management and retirement planning, delivering practical, actionable financial content to people from all walks of life. And finally, but not least, through his platform Finance for You and his growing social media presence, Patrick is breaking barriers and making financial literacy accessible to everyone. Patrick, super excited to have you on board. Welcome to The Blonde Dollar.
Thank you so much, Ignacio. I'm blushing already.
What an introduction. I mean, I was preparing those notes, for people that are not familiarized with you. And I was like, oh, wow, he's a superstar in the world of personal finance. So excited to have you on board.
Thanks. It takes one to know one, mate.
So obviously today we're going to be talking about personal finance quite a lot because that's your area of expertise. We're going to be talking about social media, about retail investors, many things to cover. But I'd like to start with personal finance, obviously. You've worked with many people on different front lines when it comes to financial education. You've made many workshops, as we were just saying. And I guess that quite often you've encountered shocking gaps in understanding some things that people surprisingly may not be familiarized with, such as how interest works or confusing net worth with income. And I've heard you in the past say that those moments reveal how poorly financial literacy is integrated in traditional education. So my first question for you is, what is the most shocking misconception about personal finance that you've encountered in the past? And what does that say really about the need for grassroots education?
Well, straight to the point, Ignacio. There are many shocking examples, too many to mention. The most deceivingly common one is that people do not understand the difference between stocks, bonds, and funds. It's that basic. So if we look at the statistics, and that is where you kind of pour over the detail and you start understanding the gravity of the situation, you'll find that in the OECD, only 34% of adults have a minimum level of financial literacy. So only 1 in 3 can pass a basic financial test. And it is not surprising that we find these gaps in real life, and I experience them through my workshops and also through my daily life followers and clients as well.
34%. That sounds insane. That's absolutely crazy. So that 34%, what does it allude exactly to? People that have basically zero financial knowledge, or people that have a little bit of knowledge, but really when you get to more specific stuff, they really don't understand the nuances?
Yeah, so it's not specific at all. It is a basic test. Well, what for us would be termed as basic, such as how would you define inflation? Do you know what compounding means? It's a multiple choice. And well, just today actually, I was in a workshop and speaking about compounding, another misconception. A firm of accountants, and these are financially savvy people, right? And yet they do not understand that, for example, a bond does not compound. You know, when you receive the interest through a bond, when you receive the coupon, then you are generally receiving it in your bank account. You know, whereas if you, for example, invest in an accumulating ETF or an accumulating bond fund, then you will experience the benefit of compounding. These little nuances add up and contribute to what I term the financial literacy crisis.
And is that financial literacy crisis what made you want to become a financial or a financial advisor, or a personal finance guru in some way? Like the frustration and the realization that there's such a big gap. Was it like what really pushed you in that direction?
Yeah, so I was working for a long time in business advisory. I had a stint in private equity in Malta, London, and I also studied in Spain. But luckily, I started teaching and lecturing from a relatively young age. And I would see early on that people of all levels, professionals like MBA candidates, CEOs, HR professionals, people of all kinds would struggle with what I took for granted as basic financial knowledge, or what we as CFA charter holders would term, hey, everybody should know these. But, you know, again, terms like compounding, terms like cash flow, liquidity, these were all terms which were unknown to them. And year after year, you know, I teach MBA program after MBA program and master's levels, and the same issues crop up. So I thought, right, 20 years have passed. I'm sitting here in a corporate job. How audacious would it be to combine my accounting, advisory, and teaching knowledge into one offering that actually makes an impact on people's lives? And I think that's happening right now.
Amazing. I'm curious to dig a little bit more into this, because obviously I'm in some sort of echo chamber. I'm a fixed income advisor. I'm surrounded by professionals. So obviously I have the feeling that everyone knows about financial markets and those terms that you were alluding to, like compounding and interest and so on. But the reality is that probably it's not the case. And I guess that when you talk about the general public, a lot of people have wrong impressions or expectations about what investing is, what it takes to be successful in investing. And a lot of people, I've heard you say in the past, that have very wrong expectations about how to become a millionaire by certain ages, and have like unhealthy comparisons that result in them having very risky financial behaviors. So in your opinion, what's the most harmful financial goal that people tend to set for themselves? And how do you specifically help them reframe it into something healthier?
This is a very interesting one, because in my view, the most harmful goal is not having a goal. My experience is people tend to think of retirement as either this fixed destination that you stumble upon when you're 65 and the state magically waves a pension, which there's no guarantee that's going to happen in the future, one. Or some very lofty, unattainable figure, say 1 million euros, that is completely unachievable to the basic, or let's say the common or the normal individual. And what I would say is, let's imagine a world or an educational system where we would have a high-level retirement planner calculating what it might take using some return assumptions, using a time horizon, what it might take to work towards a tangible figure that would be a retirement goal. Might not be at age 13, might be at age 16 or age 18, but how much more helpful it would be to teach people using figures how to plan for retirement, and it's never too early to plan for it. That is part of, in my view, what goal setting could be.
It's a bit of a paradox because you say not having a goal is the secret, but at the same time, like, you cannot plan for retirement without having some sort of specific figure in mind, right? So I guess the key is, at the end of the day, talking to a professional and having more or less a path or a clear idea of which direction to follow. But I guess the key is, without being overly ambitious and trying to be pragmatic and realistic in some way. Which brings us to another question I wanted to ask you. I know you're a big literature fan. You've talked about a story of Joseph Heller and his Catch-22 book that is a classic of American literature.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what is the anecdote that you like to use when talking about this book, and how does it apply to define what people struggle to define as being enough for them?
Yeah. So the story goes as follows, right? So there's this lavish party in New York sometime in the 1920s. Let's say it was a Great Gatsby style lavish party, and there is a hedge fund manager who's hosting this party, and there's Joseph Heller, who I believe was the author of Catch-22, and there's someone else, his friend. The name escapes me right now. And Joseph Heller's friend, right, the author of Catch-22, Joseph Heller, his friend, tells him, did you know that this hedge fund manager, this guy, earned more in one day than you ever did from your book, Catch-22? And Joseph Heller turns to him and tells him, well, that might be true, but I have something he will never have: enough. And this is a struggle I find with today's world, that one, besides the general lack of education and goal setting that we set financially, I feel, there is a general world of where we're bombarded with instant gratification. And that instant gratification means that we crave more and more and more. And what really is enough? Where do we stop? Where do we draw a line? So it might be good to articulate and say, hey, what is the baseline level of income? What is the baseline level of wealth that I need to achieve to be happy? And whether you achieve that, as you say, with a financial advisor, which would be fantastic, or on your own, then I feel that you still need to question and understand you yourself. One, what you want, and two, what your financial advisor is feeding you. And on that note, there's a very dangerous gap developing in the world. There's actually a term for this. It's called the financial advice gap, wherein, at least in my country, unless you have a certain level of wealth, you are literally shut out of the wealth management services, because of course, financial firms, investment firms have their KYC, have the regulation, and so they wouldn't be able to onboard you profitably. and that is understandable. So the onus is on us to learn and manage our financial futures, provided we don't have a massive war chest to invest.
It's almost like a philosophical question, I guess. So a part of your job almost becomes like being a life coach, because
100%.
defining what is enough is such a subjective question. Like, it varies widely from one person to another, and even like if you ask the same person at different moments in time, they will possibly give you like very different answers. I would love to see you in action in an actual session one day to see how that whole thing plans out. But thanks for the analogy. I think it's very relevant. And being an avid reader myself, I haven't read Catch 22, but I think I'll have to put it in my reading list now.
Must read.
A lot of the people that you talk to are young people, Gen Z and millennials, which are in a very difficult spot, I'd argue, right now, because on one side they're facing like rising housing costs, stagnant wages, student debt, and so on. And on the other hand, they're often criticized for their spending habits, for indulging in luxuries like an avocado toast or traveling and seeking experiences and things like that. So there's a little bit of a misconception about these younger generations when it comes to finance, because on one side, some people feel they're a bit disconnected or oblivious to financial knowledge. But you have said in the past that it is not true, actually, that this generation is thirsty for learning, for becoming better in personal finance. It's just that we need to find a way to showcase the information to them in an accessible, digestible, tech-savvy way. So my question for you is, in your opinion, what is the best way to communicate with younger generations about finance and their financial future?
Ignacio, I am a big fan of your content. I love it. I try to replicate, or I try to create similar content myself in my own way. And I believe that we're currently facing a bit of a crossroads. At least in my country, I think throughout the whole of Europe, Gen Z spend more time in the virtual world than they do in the real world. 52% of Gen Z get their financial advice from TikTok. Now, herein lies the controversy. You and I both know that we need to be very careful how to speak, especially about investments. We are bound by a code of ethics. We are regulated. And we cannot just give out investment advice. But at the same time, we need to create engaging content that resonates with today's generation. Unfortunately, yes, you and I do exist, but still, there remains a large swath of creators with dubious intentions, questionable qualifications, and outright, sometimes malicious intentions, who are engaging and are catchy. And these people tend to come from jurisdictions like the US, maybe Asia, wherein they would not fall under the regulatory cap of the European Union. And this is who we're competing against. I cannot compete against these individuals, but this is what the algorithm is feeding. So the question remains, how will regulators, how will the powers that be up top incorporate engaging financial education, engaging financial educators to be able to speak in an engaging manner without, of course, giving investment advice, and give us the guidance to say things the way we should say them. What do you think about this?
Hey there, quick favor to ask. If you enjoy the blunt dollar, the unfiltered takes, the stories, and the laughs, the easiest way to support the show is by tapping that subscribe button right now while you're listening. And here's my promise. If you do, I'll keep bringing you honest conversations, fresh perspectives, and the kind of finance talk that's engaging, insightful, and worth your time. Thanks so much for being here, and let's keep these great finance conversations going. Well, I actually have very strong opinions on this. I collaborated with the CFA Institute in the past concerning a report they wrote about influencers, which to me it's still a bit of a weird word, to be honest. Personally, I don't consider myself an influencer. I like to write content about finance, that's all. But I guess there's different things. First of all, a lot of content creators, especially because of what you said, because they don't come from the industry and don't know the regulations and the risk and so on associated to them, are doing or committing fraud or providing financial advice without really realizing it. And I think if anyone is considering creating content online, that's the first thing that they should really take into consideration, educate themselves and be aware of what they can and cannot do. And secondly, there's obviously the consumers, right? Like the people that read all this information online. Clearly, we need to protect them. A lot of people consume this content as their main source of information. As you were saying, I didn't know Gen Z's stat about 52% of them getting their TikTok as their main source of financial content. It's really, really impressive. And I guess we need to protect them. And there's not many ways to do that. It's about ensuring that whenever someone provides any sort of financial content or financial information online, that his intentions and interests are really clearly explained for anyone that is reading that information, so that they know if there's whether there is some sort of conflict of interest or a monetary incentive for them to be publishing such information and so on. And the solution, I guess, the most elegant solution to all these issues, which is also the most complicated one, would be to have all the financial regulators across the globe sitting down around a massive table with the, how many countries do we have in the world? 200 and something, I believe. So having everyone around the table and saying, okay, let's set up the rules for anyone wishing to publish financial content online, so that they know what they can and what they can't not do, because money is not a game. It's a very serious matter, and we need to make sure that everyone is aware of what should be feasible and what not. But for anyone really wishing to dig more into that topic, I recommend the Finfluencer report from the CFA Institute. Just type on Google CFA Institute Finfluencer report, and it's very well written, and there's a lot of insight in there.
That's true. Cool.
So obviously that brings us inevitably to the question of retail investors and social media and platforms like Robinhood and so on that have made accessible financial markets to a lot of people, which is great news, but has also introduced the concept of gamification, like the famous confetti animation for trades and so on, that in some instances can push people to behave impulsively in some way. And you've highlighted in the past that these kind of things have often confused investors because they were not really understanding the risk they were taking. So my question for you is, do you think the majority of retail investors really understand the risk they're taking when they're investing, or are they being misled by platforms that are basically using gamification for investing?
Well, the short answer is no. I don't think investors truly understand the risk that they're taking at large. What I know for sure is that people with apps like Robinhood traded up to 9 times more than traditional brokerages in the US. And yet the average individual investor underperformed the market by 1.5% every single year. Now, from my perspective, statistics like those defeat the purpose of democratizing investing, because here we are sat in 2025, where we have investing at our fingertips, but this is not what we signed up for. We did not sign up for trading nor gambling. There's a massive difference.
Again, you're throwing out like some interesting stats there. I didn't know that retail investors trade 9 times more than before, and that they're making 1.5% less on average because of all this gamification. I mean, I guess different studies will show different stats, but the message is maybe a portion of the population is trading more than they should. I have a little bit of a different view to you when it comes to all of this. I think having access to all these tools is great. I definitely prefer a world where people have access to financial markets than not. And I guess, each of us has also like a responsibility in educating himself and understanding what they're doing. I think really the key would be like, none of these platforms trying to mislead investors, and which I don't think it's the case really. And most of the investors simply spending a little bit more time understanding what they're doing. I think that's the key, instead of following the crowds or being subject to emotional decision making, which is another thing I wanted to ask you about from what you tell us. You're a long-term investor, and your strategy consists in trying to reduce the noise as much as possible.
Correct. I'm not interested in tapping the alpha, so to speak. I'm happy with the beta. Or, for those who don't understand, I'm happy with the market return, achieving that. I have other things to do with my time. I have my business. I'll generate my alpha through my own business, through the size premium and that sort of thing of my small business.
So, and maybe to close up this section on retail investors, obviously we've seen a lot of new things happening in the space, new technologies popping up. What do you think is next for retail investing? What are we likely to see in the next 10 years?
I published an article in the FT Advisor about this topic, more from the angle of the advisor, because people are asking, like, with all these robo-advisors, with AI and with this tech coming in, is the role of the financial advisor going to remain relevant? And my answer to that was 100%. I believe that we don't tap enough into the emotional and psychological aspects of money management. To give an example, 30% of people think about their personal finances while at work. Deloitte said that 90% say that money impacts their daily stress levels. Now notice how none of these studies say investors are concerned about the Sharpe ratio of their portfolios or the volatility or this or that. So next time we're meeting clients, instead of going on about portfolio performance, why not listen to what clients are truly saying? Because instead of long-term time horizon, perhaps they're saying, I want to fund my children's university education. Or instead of saying returns aren't high enough, might be code for it's getting too late for me to pursue my dreams. Can we look into that sort of element in our work, the emotional element, rather than solely the portfolio management one?
And have you seen any exciting projects that are trying to tap that space at the moment?
Yeah, so in my country, there is this drive. I started it for financial coaching, financial education and financial coaching. And that looks at money and finance, one from a behavioral perspective and two from a mentorship angle. So for those people who are underserved or unable to tap into financial advice, there's financial education that could get them to start to start saving, building an emergency fund, and understanding what the options are from an educational perspective. Because like you said, it's up to the individual to make that decision and to learn. The onus is on us. So having a coach guiding you is exactly that. You're the player in the football pitch and your coach is simply guiding you. I think this is going to be an increasing trend going forward.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I'm also really looking forward to see which degree of personalization we can get through technology, because at the end of the day, I think the secret really lies there. Whenever you're reading any content online, figuring out how does it apply to your specific circumstances and whether it has value or not to your specific portfolio. And I'm very keen on seeing new startups and companies trying to work on that and integrate at the same time, with the help of technology, all the behavioral finance aspects that you were alluding to.
Yeah, correct.
So I want to go now to the topic of influencers or finance content creators, because obviously it's a topic that is very close to both of our hearts. I'm only present on LinkedIn, really. I know you're on different platforms. My first question for you is, how can these social media platforms really strike a balance between encouraging all this type of finance content and cracking down on harmful misinformation? Is it even their responsibility or not? And if it is, what could they do in order to regulate or moderate a little bit this space?
Oh man, I think about this question every single day. You know, you are on LinkedIn, you're very popular on LinkedIn. And luckily that is a platform for professionals where, you show your name. So probably that is a plus in terms of transparency. So people don't hide behind their keyboards, behind their name. And the more I ask this question, the more I realize I don't know the answer. All I know is that, yes, ideally we'd all sit together, at least the major regulators in the world, US, UK, EU, at the very least, and come up with some sort of policy to enforce or crack down or promote qualified content creators. Because we tend to, at least in the EU, I believe that we tend to give a negative slant towards regulation. We tend to, in my view, regulate a lot. we focus on regulation. So what if we, as regulators, classified what qualified content creators look like, worked with them, helped them, and together joined forces and promoted this content? Because together we're stronger. As things stand, I hate to say this, but at least on TikTok and Instagram, to a lesser extent LinkedIn, whenever my content comes up, say on TikTok, chances are the next couple of videos are going to be some random stranger, normally from the US, who is of a questionable character, dubious intentions. Hell, I even have an imposter on TikTok promoting a crypto scam in my name. Oh, there's a lot of work to do.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I guess we're all learning along the way, but for sure, there needs to be some sort of coordinated effort in order to make the space safer. Because as things stand out, there's definitely a lot of dangers when it comes to the type of finance content that is promoted online. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think is worse? What is a worse issue at the moment on social media when it comes to finance content? People promoting risky strategies, or people simplifying content that can lead to real harm? Hey there, quick ad break. Do you work in the finance industry and have a genuinely interesting story to share? I'm always on the hunt for great guests who bring raw, unfiltered insights to the table. Or maybe you know someone with a story worth telling? Please put us in touch. You can reach out to me directly via LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you. And now, back to the show.
That's a really good question. It's all of the above, plus promoting products, say investing platforms or funds or whatever, where there is a monetary benefit. Yes, there is probably the second factor is the most prominent, at least that I see, wherein you'd find these content creators who promise financial freedom. You know, they're sitting on a beach and learn how to trade with me and become rich every day. When if you read through the content, then you'd see that this is nothing but either network marketing or at worst, it's a pyramid scheme. I believe that these people, their advantage is they have strength in numbers. And I would love to have a world wherein regulators, governments, decision-making bodies worked with credible creators like yourself, like me, I'd like to think, and together created content.
Well, thanks for the compliment there.
Come on, you know you're good.
I really appreciate trying to learn and trying to get better every day. That's the only thing I know. But yeah, it's definitely work in progress. Each platform has their own flair. Personally, what I like about LinkedIn is yeah, I feel the debate is a little bit more civilized, and people know who you are and your degree of believability, and that's why I feel most identified with. But I guess the underlying message here is that there is a lot of value coming from social media platforms. There's a lot of knowledge, a lot of intel, a lot of quality stuff, because we're only talking about the bad stuff, right? But the reason why I'm on these platforms is because I learned so much from other people with whom I would usually don't have the chance to exchange, you know, and for me, it's definitely a source of very valuable information. Plus, let's not forget that not everyone can have access to a Bloomberg terminal or even to, you know, a subscription to the FT. So I understand why, you know, people go to social media to seek information. But again, it's about separating what's good from bad, separating the quality stuff from the noise, and really making a good use of it. And that's by no means an easy task. And I think it's only going to get worse, actually, with the arrival of AI and all this AI-generated content, because there's going to be more and more posts out there, more production, and it's just going to magnify this whole thing. So we definitely need to do something about all this as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So
have...
please.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, we have access to the most information we ever had. Last I checked was that there's more data in the past 2 years than there ever was in history. That's beautiful.
And scary.
Exactly.
So talking about TikTok, like I've never really had a viral hit, but you did. So I wanted to ask you, can you share with our audience what your viral video was about on TikTok? And in hindsight, why do you think it went viral? What does it tell you about what your audience is looking for? And yeah, just your overall thoughts on this.
Yeah, agreed. So it was the end of a day in summer. I was still in my corporate job. I was tired. It was a bad day at the office. So I went out for a pizza to, you know, drown my sorrows. And I was going to go back home. I didn't feel like recording anything. And my friend who was with me at the time, she's like, it's just 1 minute. Let's record it. I'm like, okay, fine. I was walking my dog. I was waiting for him to, do his business. And we're like, okay, so let's record it. And this was a video of things I wish I did in my 20s, something like that. And giving tips. Like, I wish I started investing early. I wish I invested in experiences rather than, things. I wish I bought a small property rather than rent it, for example. And I don't understand why, but it went completely viral. It took me 1 minute to record that video, and it went viral. And then I have videos that I spend like 20 hours editing and painstakingly scripting that are free, by the way. Like you create free content, free value, and they don't do anywhere near as well. And that tells me that today's generation, and people at large, it's not a generational thing. What we want is authenticity. We don't want soulless institutions. People buy from people. An example I just read today, by the way, the English Premier League, which is the most powerful football league in the world, the football clubs in the English Premier League have a combined following of 200 million people, while Cristiano Ronaldo on his own has 1 billion. Which leads me to think that people want content from real people, genuine people.
So you felt that video resonated with your audience just because they in some way identified themselves with you and the problems you were sharing, and it was basically relatable and it came from an actual person rather than just some random entity.
Exactly. And I was like talking fast. I wasn't used to editing or creating videos. For me, looking at it now, it's a crappy video, man. But probably for someone who's normal, who's just like looking at this, he's like, oh, that guy's just like me. I probably passed from that street as well. So I could relate.
Yeah, that's the beauty and the curse of social media. Like, you never know what's going to work and what is not. And often the things that work the best are definitely not the ones where you've put the most work. I was thinking about my own experiences when you said that. Yeah, sometimes I made posts where I'm pouring my heart into. I'm like, this is the best thing I've written in my whole life. This is so smart, and then you get like 3 views, and then another day you're super tired. You don't know what to do. You do something like super quick in like 5 minutes, and all of a sudden it goes through the roof, and you're like, okay, I don't understand anything anymore. But yeah, that's a whole different topic, how the algorithm works.
Is there an example of a video or a post, whatever, that went completely viral and maybe didn't put enough effort in it?
From my own content, you mean?
Yeah.
I mean, as I was saying, I never really had like truly viral content. I mean, I guess it depends on how you define viral, but in LinkedIn, I'm talking about maybe 5 digits engagement, so 10,000 likes and above. I had a few at 3,000-4,000, which was nice, but truly viral, I would say, is 10,000 and above. I never had those, but I can say, like, especially at the beginning, I was putting a lot of work on my pieces. It was almost like newspaper articles, like in-depth research about, I don't know, the UK economy. Why is it slowing down? And I would imagine it as an FTPs, and I would spend maybe 7 or 8 hours and writing a lot of stuff and really like flopping. And then the day afterwards, after being frustrated with that, I would just be like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna do 3 lines summarizing what happened yesterday in the market with a nice image, and all of a sudden that would work well. There's no really, I mean, yeah, there's no real reason. I try not to think too much about this because, vanity metrics are bad for you if you're on social media, because you're gonna get a lot more frustrations than good days, I would say. You just need to try to embrace the journey and enjoy the people you're meeting along the way. I mean, I don't think we would be having this conversation today if it wasn't for LinkedIn. So I try to focus on that and a little bit less on the likes and so on. My best posts though are either, even though I never had like truly viral hits, but my best posts were either something very niche, very specific, like explaining the Credit Suisse UBS 81 situation, something like very timely and a little bit complex, and try to simplify that, or stuff related to storytelling, where I talk about a famous finance profile and their story and why I admire them in some way, which brings us to what you were saying before, that people like to consume from other people and they love stories and so on. But yeah, if I get a more specific answer or I find the magic formula, I'll let you know. Because I don't know.
I'd like to also give a shout out to all those creators like you who are sharing knowledge. This is free value, man. Like, imagine we were young, right? At least, I don't know how old you are, but you're probably younger than me. But in my 20s, yes, we had the internet, but we always like resorted to periodicals or journals or, boring, long articles. We never had free content from people in the trenches like us. You're producing all of this. You're doing it for free. Guys, follow Ignacio.
Thanks, I appreciate that, and follow Patrick also. He's also producing a lot of very high quality content. And now, looking at the future, I wanted to ask you also about AI, because obviously everyone is talking about this trend at the moment. Do you think AI is gonna replace Patrick in, I don't know, 5-10 years down the road, or are you irreplaceable forever?
Well, I think one of me is more than enough in this world, mate. I'd like to think that just like, we had tractors replacing people in the agrarian revolution, or we had the steam engine replacing others in the industrial revolution. Now we have the information age, right? You have the AI age. I'd like to think that qualities like empathy, which is something I'm very big on and something that seems to resonate with people as a finance bro. People seem to love the fact that, I speak, or I'm wearing a white t-shirt and, I'm talking like a normal, decent person, not in finance speak, with an empathic mindset. I think qualities like that will stand the test of time. But I could be wrong.
For the time being. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited. Everyone that knows me knows that I love to talk about AI. I'm an optimist, but I think we are not even realizing how powerful this is going to be. I read this sentence a couple of days ago, that we tend to overestimate the impact or how far technology can go on the short term, and underestimate it on the long term. And I think we're definitely not really realizing how far all of this is going to take us. I tend to agree with you, by the way. I feel empathy is going to be the thing that is going to be hardest to be replaced by machines. But again, I'm think we cannot even comprehend or imagine how the AI agents and machines and robots of the future are going to look like, and how human-like they're going to be. And I guess at some point, yeah, I can completely see how maybe like 50 years down the road, you go to your bank, which could be physical or online, and there's an AI agent actually answering all of your questions instead of an actual person, and making use of a lot of empathy, as we were saying, not just in a very robotic fashion. So I'm excited about it. I think there's going to be a lot of disruption in the space, and as a finance professional, I wanna become part of that change, and that's why I always try to stay updated with everything happening, playing around with the tools. And my advice for our listeners, anyone in the industry, any industry really, but particularly in finance, is you got to roll up your sleeves and use these tools and stay updated, because change is coming, change for good. But things are very likely going to change, and and the sooner you start, the better. But that's again my personal view. I know a lot of people think differently.
The John Maynard Keynes, the famous economist in the 1920s, people say he got it completely wrong when he said that, in 100 years, which is round about now, or in I think it was 80 years, he said that technology is going to advance so much that people would work less, end up not even working, and spend money on enjoyment and leisure and fun, which is, of course, not what we ended up doing. We ended up as finance people doing exactly the opposite. We created work out of nothing. But some part of me seems to kind of add credence to John Maynard Keynes, that perhaps he was not so wrong after all. Will AI facilitate our life? Will AI enable us to work smarter and not harder? Perhaps now I'm starting to believe him a bit more.
Maybe he was not so far from the truth. Good point. So we're getting close to the end. I have a couple more questions, a bit more maybe philosophical, I guess. But first of all, if you could share one universal truth about money that you think everyone should live by, what would it be?
Pay yourself first before you pay anyone else. So say, I don't know, you earn a salary. What do people usually do? They receive their salary and they start paying their mortgage, their rent, their groceries, this and that. And then if there's something left at the end of the month, then they'd keep it for themselves. So they save what's left after spending rather than spend what's left after saving.
So I guess, what you're saying also is being a little bit intentional with what you earn and proactive, especially when it comes to finance.
Yeah, 100%.
And then my final question, which brings us a little bit to your viral TikTok video, but what's a financial lesson you wish you had learned earlier in your career and that you would love our listeners to be aware of?
Oh, man. Yeah, so I hope the CFA Institute won't scold us for this. But, you and I, we went through the ringer. We did our master's degrees. We studied. We did studied for our exams. At least I studied, and then did not implement anything of what I studied in practice.
So, I mean, that's a good point. I think, like the theory part, like, I think it's great. I don't think it was a bad thing. I always say that an investment in education always pays the best interest. Yeah. So I'd argue that you becoming a CFA charter holder or doing your finance studies probably is earning you more interest than what you would have gotten from that index fund, quite honest. Yeah. But what I do agree with you is you need to put things in motion. And like the theory is great, but it's like creating a company or a startup, right? Like I'm not an expert on the field, but if you can have the best ideas, but if you don't implement them, then they're worth zero. And I guess this is the same thing. You can learn about finance as much as you want, but at the end of the day, you need to do something with that knowledge. And when it comes to your personal finance, you can read as much as you want and plan and so on. But at the end of the day, you gotta put that knowledge in practice and you gotta do something. So yeah. Start investing early and let the magic of compounding do the rest, which, as many of you know, Albert Einstein once labeled as the eighth wonder of the world. Precisely. And that, I think that's a great wrap up for this conversation. Patrick, thank you so much for coming to the show. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you on the Blunt Dollar. I think you're the first person we have on board talking about personal finance. I thought it was very insightful. I really appreciate that. Again, for those of you that don't know Patrick, make sure to check him out on socials. For those of you that know him, make sure to follow him. And Patrick, best of luck for this year. It's been an absolute honor to have you on board, and I look forward to keep talking to you in the upcoming months.
Thanks, Ignacio. I loved it. Well done.
The Blunt Dollar is written, produced, hosted, and edited by me, Ignacio Ramirez. Everything you hear, concept, script, sound design, and production comes straight from my desk, and occasionally my kitchen table. Thank you so much for listening, and join me in the next episode of The Blunt Dollar for more raw, honest finance conversations.